What if everything we think we know about ancient civilizations is just the tip of the iceberg? Picture this. You're digging through the ruins of a long-lost city when your hands brush against something strange. At first glance, it looks like a simple piece of metal or stone, but as you examine it closer, your pulse quickens. The craftsmanship is flawless, the design impossibly precise. This isn't just an artifact, it's a technological marvel that shouldn't exist for its time. And here's the chilling truth: this scenario isn't science fiction. Across the globe, buried beneath layers of dust and time, lie relics so advanced they shatter our understanding of history. These aren't just curiosities, they're Techifacts objects that defy explanation, left behind by cultures that vanished without a trace. Think about the Antikythera Mechanism, a 2,000-year-old device so intricate it's been called the world's first analog computer. Or the Baghdad Battery, a clay jar that might have been an ancient power source. How could these civilizations have created such innovations, only to disappear into the shadows of time? The deeper we dig, the more questions arise. Were these cultures far more advanced than we've ever imagined? Did they possess knowledge that was lost, suppressed, or simply forgotten? Every artifact tells a story, but these whisper secrets that challenge the very foundations of our historical narrative. This isn't just a journey through the past, it's a detective story spanning centuries. We'll piece together clues from archaeology, physics, and even astronomy to unravel these mysteries. Along the way, you'll encounter cultures that mastered engineering feats we're only beginning to comprehend, and artifacts so puzzling they've sparked debates among the brightest minds of our time. So buckle up, because by the end of this exploration, you'll see history in a whole new light. The past isn't as distant as we think, and its echoes might just hold the key to understanding our own future. Ready to uncover the truth? Let's begin. Among the sun-baked ruins of ancient Crete, the Minoans built a civilization so advanced it rivaled the great empires of the Bronze Age. Yet one of their most baffling legacies isn't a towering palace or intricate fresco, it's a small, round clay slab no bigger than a dinner plate. The Phaistos Disc, discovered in 1908, is covered on both sides with 45 distinct symbols pressed into the clay in a tight spiral. From musical instruments to human figures, each symbol was stamped with precision, making this artifact the earliest known example of movable type, a technology Europe wouldn't rediscover for another 3,000 years. What's truly bewildering is that nothing like it has ever been found elsewhere in Minoan ruins. No drafts, no similar tablets, no tools that could explain how they achieved such flawless stamping. The symbols themselves are a linguistic dead end. Scholars have proposed everything from an early form of Greek to a completely unknown language. But after more than a century of study, the disc's message remains locked away. Was it a sacred hymn, a merchant's inventory, or perhaps even a coded military dispatch? The theories are as varied as they are unproven. Even more perplexing is the disc's isolation. If the Minoans had mastered this printing technique, why didn't they use it elsewhere? Did the knowledge die with its creator, or was the disc something so unique it was never meant to be replicated? The spiral pattern adds another layer of intrigue, symbols winding inward like a labyrinth, mirroring the very palace corridors where it was found. Some researchers suggest it might represent an ancient board game or astronomical chart, while others argue the symbols could be syllables from a lost Minoan dialect. What's undeniable is the disc's sophistication. The precision of the stamps implies a level of technological planning far beyond simple record-keeping. And if the Minoans could produce this, what other innovations have been lost to time? The disc is a silent witness to a culture that thrived on creativity and ingenuity, only to vanish beneath the ash of Thera's volcanic eruption. It's a reminder that history isn't just written in grand monuments sometimes. The smallest artifacts hold the loudest mysteries. While the Minoans left behind their cryptic stamped disc, another civilization from the same era crafted objects just as mystifying, but with an entirely different purpose. The Indus Valley civilization, flourishing over 4,000 years ago in what's now Pakistan and northwest India, built some of the world's first planned cities, complete with grid layouts and advanced drainage systems. Yet their most enduring puzzles aren't the ruins of their streets, but the tiny, exquisitely carved soapstone seals they left behind. Each seal, no larger than a postage stamp, bears a short burst of symbols from a script that remains undeciphered to this day. Alongside the writing, you'll often find intricate engravings, mythical beasts like unicorns with curved horns, or human-like figures seated in poses strikingly similar to modern yoga asanas. These aren't just decorative, the level of detail suggests they held deep significance. Some scholars argue the seals were used to stamp goods for trade, acting as a sort of Bronze Age barcode. Others believe they served as amulets or ritual objects, possibly tied to early spiritual practices that would later evolve into Hinduism. What makes these artifacts even more enigmatic is what's missing. Unlike other ancient cultures, the Indus Valley people left behind no grand temples, no towering statues of kings, no epic inscriptions boasting of conquests. Their cities were practical, almost egalitarian, but their seals whisper of a rich symbolic world we can't fully access. The script, with over 400 distinct characters, doesn't resemble any known language. Is it proto-writing, a full-fledged language, or something in between? Without a Rosetta Stone equivalent, every attempt at translation has hit a wall. Then there's the yoga connection. Several seals depict figures sitting cross-legged, hands resting on their knees, in what looks unmistakably like meditation. If these are indeed early representations of yogic practice, it could push back the origins of yoga by centuries. But were these poses spiritual or just artistic conventions? The silence of the script leaves us guessing. The Indus Valley civilization didn't collapse so much as fade away, their cities abandoned gradually rather than destroyed. As their seals spread across trade networks from Mesopotamia to Central Asia, their influence lingered but their voice was lost. These tiny carved stones are like frozen moments of a culture that mastered urban living, art, and perhaps even spiritual discipline, yet left no manual to explain themselves. In that way, they're more haunting than any ruined palace, a reminder that even the most advanced societies can vanish, taking their secrets with them. High above the arid plains of southern Peru, the desert floor becomes a canvas, one etched with lines so vast they stretch for miles, forming shapes so precise they seem impossible without modern technology. These are the Nazca Lines, a sprawling network of geoglyphs created between 500 BCE and 500 CE by a culture that mastered the art of turning an entire landscape into a message. From a hummingbird with wings outstretched to a spider with perfectly proportioned legs, these designs aren't just large, they're mathematically flawless, their symmetry intact even when scaled up to hundreds of meters. And here's what baffles researchers. The Nazca people had no way to view their work from above. No balloons, no flying machines, just the stark desert and their own ingenuity. So how did they do it? One theory points to simple yet ingenious tools. By scaling up small models using ropes and stakes, the Nazca could have plotted out their design step by step, relying on precise measurements and an intimate knowledge of perspective. But even this explanation doesn't fully account for the sheer scale and accuracy of some geoglyphs, like the spiral-tailed monkey or the towering humanoid figure nicknamed the astronaut. The lines themselves are shallow, carved just deep enough to reveal the lighter-colored soil beneath, a technique that preserved them for centuries, as if the desert itself was conspiring to keep their secrets. Then there's the question of purpose. Some researchers argue the lines functioned as a massive astronomical calendar, aligning with solstices or constellations to mark agricultural cycles. Others propose they were ritual pathways walked by priests during ceremonies to invoke rain or fertility, but the most tantalizing theory ties them to water. Beneath the Nazca Desert lies an intricate network of aqueducts, some still in use today. Could the geoglyphs have served as a map to these hidden lifelines, or perhaps as offerings to deities controlling the scarce resource? The Nazca's sudden disappearance only deepens the enigma. By 700 CE, their society had collapsed, possibly due to climate shifts or overuse of resources. Yet their lines remained untouched by time, as if waiting for someone or something to finally decipher their meaning. Even today, new geoglyphs are discovered, hinting that we've only scratched the surface of what this culture left behind. Were the lines meant for the gods, for future civilizations, or for beings we haven't even imagined? The desert keeps its silence, leaving us to wonder if the Nazca's greatest masterpiece wasn't the lines themselves, but the mystery they crafted so perfectly. Deep in the sweltering jungles of Mexico's Gulf Coast, the Olmecs carved their legacy into stone literally. These towering heads, some standing over 9 feet tall and weighing as much as 40 tons, aren't just sculptures. They're monuments to a civilization so advanced it laid the foundation for every Mesoamerican culture that followed. Known as the mother culture of the region, the Olmecs didn't just create art, they shaped the very identity of ancient Central America. But how did a people without wheels, metal tools, or domesticated animals manage to quarry, transport, and sculpt such massive blocks of basalt? The answer lies in a combination of brute strength and brilliant engineering. The basalt used for these heads came from the Tuxtla Mountains, over 50 miles away from the Olmec heartland. Researchers believe the stones were dragged on log rollers or floated along rivers on rafts, a staggering feat of logistics requiring hundreds, if not thousands, of workers. Each head is unique, with individualized facial features, headdresses, and expressions so lifelike they seem to whisper across the centuries. Some scholars argue these are portraits of Olmec rulers, immortalized in stone to assert their divine authority. Others suggest they represent deities or legendary ancestors, watching over ceremonial centers like the sacred city of La Venta. But the heads are just one piece of the puzzle. The Olmecs were also master craftsmen of jade, carving intricate figurines and ceremonial axes with symbols that hint at an early form of writing. One artifact, the Cascajal block, bears 62 glyphs that might be the oldest writing system in the Americas, predating the Maya by centuries. Yet, unlike later civilizations, the Olmecs left no decipherable texts, no royal chronicles to explain their beliefs or history. Their legacy is etched in symbols we can't fully read, leaving us to interpret their world through fragments. Then there's the mystery of their disappearance. By 400 BCE, their great cities were abandoned, their monuments defaced or buried. Was it climate change, internal strife, or some unseen catastrophe that brought down this influential culture? Unlike the Maya or Aztecs, the Olmecs didn't fade into history. They vanished abruptly, as if stepping off the stage of time, yet their influence endured. From the Maya calendar to the Aztec feathered serpent, echoes of Olmec art and ideology ripple through later civilizations. Perhaps the most haunting question isn't how they carved these heads, but why they stopped. The Olmecs had the technology, the organization, and the artistic vision to create wonders, yet their civilization crumbled before passing on its full story. Those stone faces, now weathered by centuries of rain and wind, seem to hold the answer, but like so much of the Olmec world, their silence is as profound as their artistry. When you walk through the shadowed halls of the Dendera temple, one carving stops you cold. There, etched into the ancient stone, is a shape that looks unnervingly modern, a bulbous object cradled in the hands of a priest, with what appears to be a snake-like filament coiled inside, connected to a base that resembles a socket. To some, this isn't just art, it's evidence the ancient Egyptians might have harnessed electricity long before the modern era. Known as the Dendera light, this 2,000-year-old relief has sparked debates that blur the line between archaeology and science fiction. Mainstream Egyptologists dismiss the idea as pure fantasy, arguing the image represents a symbolic depiction of a lotus flower or a cosmic serpent, tied to the mythology of the sun god Ra. But the precision of the carving raises questions. Why does the filament twist in such a deliberate, almost technical way? Why does the entire ensemble resemble an electrical apparatus more than any known religious symbol? Proponents of the lost technology theory point to other anomalies like the absence of soot marks in certain underground chambers where torches would have been the only light source. How did the Egyptians illuminate these spaces with such clarity? Then there's the architecture. The Great Pyramid's alignment with true north is accurate to within a fraction of a degree, a feat requiring knowledge of astronomy and geometry that seems improbable for its time. The pyramid's inner chambers also exhibit acoustic properties that suggest an understanding of sound waves far beyond what we've credited to ancient builders. Could these achievements hint at a deeper, forgotten science? Skeptics counter that attributing advanced technology to the Egyptians undermines their very real ingenuity. They didn't need electricity to create masterpieces, just patience, skill, and a profound connection to their environment. Yet the Dendera relief lingers as an open question, a whisper from the past that refuses to be silenced. Whether it's a metaphor for divine light or a literal blueprint for lost technology, one thing is certain: the ancient Egyptians were far more sophisticated than we often assume. And if even a fraction of these theories hold weight, our understanding of history might need rewriting. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. The Dendera light may not be a light bulb at all, but it could represent something just as revolutionary. A civilization that saw the boundaries between science, art, and spirituality as fluid, not fixed. In that sense, their greatest innovation wasn't a single device, but a way of thinking that merged the tangible and the mystical into something timeless. And that, in its own way, is more illuminating than any modern invention. Among the dusty shelves of Baghdad's National Museum sits an unassuming clay jar, one that could rewrite the history of technology. Discovered in 1936 near the outskirts of the city, this 2,000-year-old artifact looks like a simple storage vessel at first glance. But inside lies something extraordinary. A copper cylinder carefully soldered with asphalt, housing an iron rod suspended perfectly in its center. Fill it with an acidic liquid like vinegar or grape juice, and something remarkable happens. This humble jar becomes a battery capable of producing a small but measurable electric current. Known as the Baghdad Battery, it's a discovery so ahead of its time that scholars still grapple with its purpose. The Sumerians, whose influence stretched across Mesopotamia long before this artifact's creation, were no strangers to innovation. They gave us the first known writing system, cuneiform, along with advanced astronomy that mapped the movements of planets with startling accuracy. Their mathematical system, based on the number 60, still echoes in how we measure time and angles today. But electricity, that's a leap few expected. Yet the Baghdad Battery's design is undeniably functional. Replicas have proven it can generate around 1 volt of power, not enough to light a modern bulb, but sufficient for electroplating gold onto silver or copper. Some theorize the Sumerians or their successors, the Parthians, used these jars to gild religious idols or jewelry, creating a shimmering illusion of divine radiance. But here's where the mystery deepens. No electroplated artifacts from this era have ever been found, leaving the battery's practical use in question. Alternative theories suggest it might have served a medical purpose, delivering mild shocks to numb pain or stimulate muscles, an ancient precursor to modern electrotherapy. Others propose a ritualistic role, with a gentle current symbolizing divine energy or even mimicking the electric charge of certain fish, which were revered in Mesopotamian mythology. What's most tantalizing isn't just the battery itself, but what it implies. If this technology existed, how widespread was it? Were there other, more powerful devices lost to time? The Sumerians documented everything from tax records to epic poetry on clay tablets, yet not a single text mentions this invention. Was it a guarded secret, or simply so commonplace it wasn't worth noting? The absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, but it leaves us with a haunting gap in the story. Perhaps the battery's true significance lies in what it reveals about ancient ingenuity. Even if its purpose remains unclear, the fact that someone 2 millennia ago harnessed basic electrochemical principles challenges our assumptions about the timeline of discovery. It's a reminder that history isn't a straight line of progress. Sometimes knowledge flickers like a spark, only to be buried until another era rediscovers it. The Baghdad Battery may not have powered cities, but it electrifies our imagination, proving that the past is far more inventive than we've ever dared to dream. The ancient Maya didn't just watch the stars, they mapped the cosmos with a precision that still leaves astronomers in awe. High in the jungles of Central America, their temples rise like stone compasses, perfectly aligned to solstices, equinoxes, and the cyclical dance of Venus. At Chichen Itzá, during the spring and autumn equinoxes, sunlight slithers down the steps of El Castillo, casting a shadow that resembles a serpent descending to Earth, a celestial spectacle engineered with mathematical exactness. But how did a civilization without telescopes or modern instruments achieve such accuracy? The answer lies in centuries of patient observation, recorded in bark paper codices and carved into stelae with glyphs that whisper of a people obsessed with time. Their long count calendar, spanning over 5,000 years, wasn't just a way to mark days, it was a cosmic clock tracking planetary cycles down to the minute. Venus, the brightest wanderer in their sky, held particular significance. The Dresden Codex, one of the few surviving Maya manuscripts, contains a Venus table so precise it calculates the planet's appearances and disappearances over a span of 384 years, with an error margin of just 2 hours. To achieve this, the Maya likely used observatories like the Caracol at Chichen Itzá, with narrow windows strategically placed to frame Venus at key points in its orbit. Some researchers speculate they might have employed polished obsidian mirrors or water-filled basins to refine their sightings, turning simple tools into instruments of extraordinary precision. Yet for all their celestial mastery, the Mayas' downfall remains one of history's great enigmas. By the 9th century, their bustling cities, once hubs of trade, art, and science, were abandoned to the jungle. Was it climate change? A series of devastating droughts, recorded in stalagmites from local caves, suggest environmental stress. But layers of ash in lake sediments also hint at violent conflicts, possibly fueled by resource scarcity or political fractures. Unlike the abrupt collapse of the Olmecs, the Maya decline was staggered, with some cities enduring while others fell silent. The greatest irony, a culture that could predict eclipses centuries in advance seemingly couldn't foresee its own unraveling. Or perhaps they did. Some scholars point to cryptic prophecies in their texts warning of cyclical destruction and renewal. Maybe the Maya saw their demise not as an end, but as a necessary turn in time's great wheel. Today, their descendants still keep aspects of this ancient knowledge alive, proving that while empires fade, wisdom has a way of enduring. The stone temples may crumble, but the stars they charted still shine, a testament to a civilization that reached for the heavens and, in doing so, touched eternity. When you picture Viking ships cutting through the frigid waters of the North Atlantic, it's easy to imagine them relying on brute strength and luck to navigate. But buried in the ruins of a Norse settlement in Greenland lies an artifact that shatters that stereotype, the Unartok Disc. This small, circular slab of wood, dated to the 11th century, isn't just a relic. It's a sophisticated navigational tool that reveals how the Vikings mastered the open ocean with nothing but the sun and their wits. The disc's surface is etched with a series of carefully carved lines radiating from its center, intersecting with concentric circles. At first glance, it might look like a child's drawing, but these markings are anything but random. When paired with a shadow-casting gnomon, a small vertical rod, the disc transforms into a sun compass. By tracking the shadow's movement across the lines, Viking navigators could determine cardinal directions with startling precision, even under the overcast skies that often blanket the North Atlantic. This wasn't guesswork, it was applied astronomy, leveraging their intimate knowledge of the sun's path at different latitudes. What's truly remarkable is the disc's adaptability. Unlike a magnetic compass which points north regardless of location, the Unartok disc had to be calibrated for specific latitudes. Researchers who tested replicas found that the markings align perfectly with the sun's trajectory at a latitude of 61 degrees right along the Vikings' common sailing route from Norway to Greenland. This suggests the disc wasn't a one-off experiment but part of a broader navigational system, possibly refined over generations of trial and error. But how did they use it on cloudy days or during the long twilight of Arctic summers? Here's where Viking ingenuity really shines. Historical accounts mention a mysterious sunstone, a crystal believed to polarize sunlight, allowing navigators to locate the sun's position even when it was hidden behind clouds. While no sunstones have been definitively linked to the Unartok disc, the combination of these tools would have given Vikings an edge no other medieval culture possessed. The disc also hints at a deeper truth. The Vikings weren't just raiders or explorers, they were engineers of their environment. They didn't conquer the Atlantic by chance, they decoded it, turning celestial patterns into a roadmap. This challenges the stereotype of Vikings as mere barbarians, revealing a culture capable of blending observation, innovation, and sheer daring to achieve the impossible. And yet, like so many of the cultures we've explored, the Vikings left no manual. The Unartok disc is a silent witness to a knowledge system that vanished with its creators. As Greenland's Norse settlements faded into history, victims of climate shifts and isolation, their navigational secrets were lost until a piece of wood, half buried in the tundra, whispered a fragment of their story. It's a reminder that mastery isn't always written in stone. Sometimes it's carved into something far more fragile, waiting centuries for someone to read between the lines. Beneath the turquoise waters off the coast of Antikythera, a diver in 1901 stumbled upon a corroded lump of bronze that would rewrite history. What emerged after decades of careful restoration wasn't just another artifact. It was a technological marvel so complex it took modern scientists nearly a century to fully understand it. The Antikythera Mechanism, roughly the size of a shoebox, is a labyrinth of interlocking gears, dials, and inscriptions that functioned as an astronomical calculator. With a turn of its hand crank, this 2,000-year-old device could predict solar eclipses, track the 4-year cycle of the Olympic Games, and even model the irregular orbit of the Moon. The precision of its engineering is staggering. Tiny gear teeth, some just a millimeter wide, meshed together with mathematical perfection to replicate celestial movements. One set of gears mimics the Moon's elliptical path so accurately it accounts for a subtle wobble in its orbit, a phenomenon modern astronomers call lunar anomaly. This level of sophistication implies the Greeks didn't just observe the heavens, they quantified them, translating cosmic patterns into mechanical poetry. But here's the puzzle: nothing like it appears in surviving Greek texts. Historians have scoured the works of Archimedes, Hipparchus, and Ptolemy for clues, yet the mechanism remains eerily absent from the record. Was it a state secret, a prototype, or perhaps the work of a lone genius whose name vanished with time? Some scholars speculate it originated in the workshops of Rhodes, where legendary inventors like Posidonius may have pushed the boundaries of technology. Others suggest it was aboard that ill-fated ship precisely because it was rare, a luxury item for a wealthy patron or a scholar's prized possession. The mechanism's isolation raises even deeper questions. If the Greeks could build this, what else did they create? Ancient texts hint at other wonders: steam-powered devices, automatic doors, even proto-telescopes, but without physical evidence, these remain tantalizing maybes. The Antikythera Mechanism is a whisper of a lost era when science and craftsmanship intertwined in ways we're only beginning to grasp. Perhaps its greatest lesson isn't about gears or astronomy, but about the fragility of knowledge. For over 1,000 years, technology this advanced vanished from the historical record, only to resurface when a sponge diver's luck brought it back into the light. It's a humbling reminder that progress isn't inevitable sometimes. Brilliance flickers out, waiting for another age to rediscover it. The mechanism's silent gears still spin a warning: civilizations don't just rise and fall. Sometimes they forget. Standing on the windswept slopes of Easter Island, it's hard not to feel dwarfed by the towering Moai, those solemn stone sentinels gazing inland, their hollow eyes seeming to hold secrets of a lost world. These statues, some weighing as much as a fully loaded semi-truck, weren't just carved, they were transported miles across rugged terrain by the Rapa Nui people, a culture that thrived in isolation over 2,000 miles from the nearest continent. Without wheels, metal tools, or even large animals to assist them, how did they achieve this feat? The answer might lie in a technique as unexpected as it is ingenious: making the statues walk. In 2012, archaeologists Terry Hunt and Carl Lipo proposed a radical theory. By attaching ropes to a Moai's base and rocking it side to side with coordinated pulls, teams could have maneuvered the statues forward in a shuffling motion, almost like tilting a fridge to inch it across the floor, but on a colossal scale. Experiments with concrete replicas showed that just 18 people could walk a 10-ton statue hundreds of feet in under an hour. The method aligns with oral traditions passed down by the Rapa Nui, who speak of the Moai moving on their own. Even the statue's design supports the idea. Their forward-leaning posture and curved bases seem tailor-made for this rocking motion, but not everyone's convinced. Critics point to the island's ancient roads, which bear grooves and where patterns suggesting the Moai were dragged horizontally on wooden sledges or rollers. Others argue both methods might have been used depending on the terrain. The truth could be a blend of ingenuity and adaptation. After all, the Rapa Nui had centuries to refine their techniques. What's haunting, though, isn't just how they moved the Moai, but why they stopped. By the time European explorers arrived in the 18th century, many statues lay toppled and unfinished, half-carved from the volcanic rock of Ronororaku Quarry. The island's ecosystem had collapsed, its once lush palm forests reduced to stubble by overharvesting and invasive rats. Did the Rapa Nui's obsession with monument building contribute to their downfall, or was it a desperate bid to appease the gods as resources dwindled? The Moai's silent faces offer no answers, only a warning about the fragile balance between ambition and survival. Yet the real mystery isn't the statues' transport or even their abandonment. It's the resilience of the Rapa Nui themselves. Despite ecological catastrophe, they adapted, shifting from monumental art to a new tradition of birdman rituals. Their story isn't just one of collapse but reinvention, proof that even in isolation, humanity's creativity endures. The Moai may be frozen in stone, but the people who carved them were anything but static. They remind us that civilizations don't truly vanish. They transform, leaving behind puzzles not just in what they built, but in what they chose to leave unfinished. Hidden beneath the lush jungles of Cambodia lies a water wonderland straight out of an engineer's dream, or perhaps a cautionary tale. The Khmer Empire's crown jewel, Angkor Wat, isn't just a temple, it's the heart of a hydraulic masterpiece. Imagine a network of canals, moats, and reservoirs so vast it could rival modern urban water systems, all built without so much as a steel shovel. The largest of these reservoirs, the West Barre, stretches 5 miles long and holds over 50 million cubic meters of water. That's enough to fill 20,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. But how did a civilization from the 9th to 15th centuries achieve such precision? The answer lies in the Khmer's deep understanding of their environment. Monsoon rains flooded the region for half the year, while droughts parched it the other half. Instead of fighting this cycle, they harnessed it. Their engineers designed a grid of canals that funneled floodwaters into massive reservoirs, creating a buffer against dry seasons. Gravity did the rest. Water flowed through carefully graded channels to irrigate rice paddies, sustaining a population that may have exceeded 1 million at its peak. The system's brilliance wasn't just in scale, it was in adaptability. Recent LiDAR scans reveal underground channels and spillways that acted like pressure valves, preventing catastrophic breaches during heavy rains. Yet the most haunting question isn't how they built it, but why it failed. By the 15th century, Angkor was abandoned, its temples swallowed by jungle. For decades, historians blamed invasions from neighboring kingdoms, but tree ring studies tell a different story. One of prolonged droughts punctuated by devastating floods, a climate roller coaster that would have strained even the Khmer's ingenious system. The very canals that sustained them may have accelerated their downfall. Deforestation to expand farmland triggered erosion, clogging waterways with silt. When the rains faltered, the reservoirs ran dry. When they returned, choked channels couldn't contain the deluge. The Khmer's legacy isn't just a lesson in engineering, it's a mirror. Their system worked flawlessly until pushed beyond its limits, a reminder that even the most advanced societies are bound by nature's rhythms. Walking through Angkor's ruins today, you'll see carvings of mythical serpents, symbols of water's divine power. Perhaps they understood better than most. Civilization dances on a knife's edge between abundance and scarcity, and the line between mastery and hubris is as thin as a monsoon's first raindrop. The Tartessians didn't just work metal, they mastered it to a degree that turned their name into legend. Nestled in what's now southern Spain, this Bronze Age civilization flourished between the 9th and 6th centuries CE, their wealth whispered about in Greek and Phoenician texts like a trader's fever dream. The biblical Tarshish, famed for its ships laden with silver and tin, might well have been Tartessos. Yet for all the written praise, the physical proof is maddeningly scarce. A handful of ornate gold belts, a few bronze figurines, and scattered fragments of jewelry are all that remain of a culture described as the metalworking giants of their age. So where did it all go? One clue lies in the very nature of their craft. Unlike stone monuments or clay tablets, metal is valuable and recyclable. The Tartessians' bronze weapons, silver goblets, and gold ornaments wouldn't have been left to gather dust in tombs or temples. Conquerors would have melted them down, traders would have bartered them across continents, and time would have corroded what wasn't repurposed. Even their capital city, Tartessos, has eluded discovery, possibly submerged under the shifting wetlands of the Guadalquivir River Delta. Some archaeologists speculate that rising sea levels or seismic activity swallowed it whole, locking away its secrets beneath layers of silt and salt water. But the real mystery isn't the absence of artifacts, it's the descriptions that survive. Greek historian Herodotus wrote of a Tartessian king presenting a silver-gold alloy so pure it outshone the sun, while Phoenician traders boasted of exchanging luxury goods for their intricate bronze work. The few surviving pieces, like the Carambolo treasure, a cache of golden plaques adorned with celestial symbols, hint at a sophistication that rivals contemporary Egyptian or Mesopotamian craftsmanship. Their designs blend local motifs with influences from distant cultures, suggesting a society plugged into a vast Mediterranean trade network. What's most tantalizing is the possibility that the Tartessians weren't just skilled metallurgists, they might have been innovators. Ancient texts mention a unique metal called electrum, a natural mix of gold and silver, which they allegedly refined into something even more extraordinary. Could they have discovered early techniques for alloying or plating that were later lost? Without their workshops or written records, we're left piecing together rumors from rivals and trading partners, like trying to reconstruct a symphony from a handful of scattered notes. Then there's the question of their sudden disappearance. By the 6th century BCE, references to Tartessos dry up. Some blame Carthaginian invasions, others point to environmental collapse or the exhaustion of their mines. But perhaps the answer is simpler. Their greatest legacy wasn't meant to endure. Unlike pyramids or stone tablets, metal is fluid. It changes hands, transforms, vanishes into the melt of history. The Tartessians might have understood that better than anyone. Their work wasn't meant to stand frozen in time. It was meant to circulate, to be reforged, to live on in the hands of others. In that sense, their legacy isn't lost, it's just waiting to be recognized in the gleam of every ancient artifact that passed through their hands. Imagine a world where mammoths still roamed, where vast ice sheets sculpted the land, and where a group of hunters wielded weapons so effective they spread across an entire continent in what seems like the blink of an eye. This was the world of the Clovis people, North America's first widely recognized culture, whose distinctive fluted spear points have been unearthed from modern-day Arizona to the eastern seaboard. These artifacts aren't just tools, they're signatures, each one bearing the hallmark of a technique so refined it suggests a level of organization and communication that defies their ancient timeline. What's striking isn't just the craftsmanship, but the speed of their expansion. Within a few centuries, Clovis points appear from coast to coast, a uniformity that hints at a shared knowledge system passed rapidly across generations. Were they following migrating herds, or was there something more deliberate about their spread? The precision of their spearheads, with their characteristic fluted bases, allowed them to be hafted securely onto shafts, creating weapons capable of taking down megafauna like giant sloths and mastodons. These weren't just hunters, they were specialists, engineers of survival in a harsh, untamed world. Yet, just as suddenly as they appeared, the Clovis vanished from the archaeological record around 12,000 years ago. Their disappearance coincides with a period of dramatic environmental upheaval, the Younger Dryas, a climatic roller coaster that saw temperatures plummet and ice sheets re-advance. Some researchers point to a more catastrophic explanation, the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, which suggests a comet or asteroid fragment may have exploded in the atmosphere, triggering wildfires, climate shifts, and a collapse of the ecosystems the Clovis relied upon. Layers of sediment from this time contain nanodiamonds and elevated levels of iridium, materials often linked to extraterrestrial impacts, but the theory remains contentious, with critics arguing the evidence could also stem from volcanic activity or other natural processes. Another puzzle is what followed. Did the Clovis simply fade away, or did their knowledge live on in later cultures? Some of their tool-making techniques appear in subsequent groups, like the Folsom tradition, but the connection is hazy. Were these the descendants of the Clovis adapting to a changed world, or entirely new peoples arriving in their wake? The absence of Clovis DNA in later populations deepens the mystery. Genetic studies of ancient remains suggest a complex mosaic of migrations and replacements, leaving the fate of these early Americans frustratingly opaque. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of the Clovis story is its echoes in our own time. A culture that thrived by mastering their environment, only to face collapse when that environment shifted beyond recognition. Their spear points, scattered like forgotten bookmarks in the soil, remind us that survival is never guaranteed, even for those who seem invincible. The Clovis didn't just leave behind tools, they left a question etched in stone. What happens when the world you've perfected no longer exists? In the rolling hills of what's now Romania, Moldova, and Ukraine, the Cucuteni Tripilia people built settlements so vast they rivaled early cities, only to set them ablaze with deliberate, almost ritualistic precision. These weren't accidents or attacks. The burn patterns tell a story of control. Flames licked walls in careful sequences, leaving behind layers of ash and mystery. Every 6 to 8 decades, entire communities would torch their homes, their temples, even their workshops, then rebuild atop the ashes. Why? The answer might lie in the very way they saw the world. Their pottery offers the first clue. Cucuteni Tripilia ceramics aren't just functional, they're canvases. Swirling spirals, serpentine motifs, and bold geometric patterns adorn bowls and figurines, some depicting goddess-like figures with exaggerated hips and staring eyes. These designs pulse with symbolism, possibly tied to cycles of life, death, and rebirth. If their art reflects their beliefs, then fire wasn't destruction, it was transformation. Archaeologists speculate the burnings were a kind of communal reset, a way to purify the land or appease deities tied to renewal. Imagine the spectacle, flames consuming homes packed with belongings, the air thick with smoke, as entire villages watched their world turn to embers, only to begin again. But the scale of these settlements complicates the picture. At their peak, around 4700 BCE, some housed up to 15,000 people, making them among the largest Neolithic communities on Earth. Their urban planning was astonishingly advanced. Concentric rings of houses radiating outward, communal kilns, and granaries suggesting organized food storage. This wasn't a scattered tribal society. It was a proto-civilization with the logistical know-how to coordinate massive construction projects. So why abandon such sophistication to the flames? One theory points to soil exhaustion. After decades of farming, the land might have needed rest, and fire could have been a way to replenish nutrients. Yet evidence of crop rotation challenges this idea. Another possibility hinges on social structure. Without clear signs of hierarchy, no palaces, no grand tombs, the Cucuteni Tripilia might have been egalitarian to their core. Periodic burnings could have prevented wealth accumulation, ensuring no single family or leader gained permanent dominance. It's a radical notion, a society so committed to equality that they literally leveled the playing field. Then there's the silence. Unlike later cultures, they left no decipherable writing, no carvings to explain their actions. Their language is lost, their rituals inferred from charred ruins and broken pottery. The burnings might have been celebrations, funerals for entire villages, or even a form of communal theater, a way to bind generations together through shared spectacle. What's certain is that these weren't acts of desperation. The care taken in rebuilding, the repetition across centuries, speaks of a people deeply intentional about their relationship with time, with the earth, and with each other. The greatest mystery isn't why they burned their world, but why they stopped. By 3500 BCE, the fires ceased, the settlements emptied. Climate shifts. Invasions. Or did the ritual simply lose its meaning? The ashes hold no answers, only whispers of a culture that thrived for millennia, then vanished as deliberately as they lived, leaving behind scorched earth and a question that lingers like smoke. What does it mean to build something beautiful, knowing you'll one day set it alight? High in the rugged highlands of Anatolia, the Hittites forged more than weapons, they forged an empire. While their contemporaries shaped bronze, these ancient innovators unlocked the secrets of iron, wielding it with such skill that their enemies whispered of supernatural aid. The technology wasn't just advanced for its time, it was revolutionary. By heating iron ore to blistering temperatures and hammering it into hardened steel, the Hittites crafted blades that didn't just nick bronze armor, they shattered it. Kings from Egypt to Mesopotamia scrambled to acquire their weapons, paying fortunes for what amounted to a military superpower in the palm of a hand. But the real mystery isn't how they mastered iron, it's why their knowledge vanished so completely. When the Hittite Empire collapsed around 1200 BCE, their ironworking techniques didn't spread, they evaporated. For centuries, the world reverted to bronze, as if this leap forward had never happened. Was it deliberate suppression? The ruins of Hattusa, their sprawling capital, offer tantalizing hints. Burned buildings and shattered tablets suggest a violent end, possibly at the hands of the so-called Sea Peoples, a shadowy coalition of raiders who swept through the Mediterranean like a storm. Yet, even in chaos, why didn't fleeing Hittite smiths carry their expertise to new lands? One theory points to the very nature of their craft. Hittite iron wasn't just about temperature, it was about trade. Their mines in the Taurus Mountains produced ore laced with trace amounts of nickel and cobalt, creating an alloy far stronger than ordinary iron. Without access to these specific deposits, later smiths couldn't replicate the results, turning a scientific breakthrough into a geographical fluke. The Hittites might have guarded their methods so closely that when their cities fell, the knowledge died with them. Then there's the political angle. Clay tablets from Hattusa reveal a kingdom paranoid about espionage. One decree threatens death to anyone teaching ironworking to foreigners. Could rival powers have systematically erased this technology to prevent its resurgence? The Egyptians, after suffering defeats by Hittite iron swords, might have had motive to ensure no one else wielded such power. Yet the most haunting clue lies in the artifacts themselves. Recent excavations uncovered a sealed workshop in Hattusa, its furnaces still filled with half-smelted ore. It's as if the smiths walked away mid-process, leaving their tools where they lay. Whether to invasion, famine, or some unseen catastrophe, the Hittites didn't just fall, they left in a hurry, taking their secrets to the grave. The irony is profound. A civilization that tamed fire and earth to create the ultimate weapon couldn't armor itself against time. Their legacy isn't just in the blades they forged, but in the void they left, a centuries-long gap in human progress that begs the question, how many other breakthroughs have been lost to the chaos of history? The Hittites remind us that advancement isn't inevitable. Sometimes the brightest flames flicker out, leaving only echoes in the ashes. In the heart of China's Sichuan Basin, buried beneath layers of earth for over 3,000 years, a treasure trove of bronze artistry lies shattered quite literally. The Sanxingdui culture, which thrived during the Shang dynasty's zenith, didn't just craft metal objects, they conjured nightmares and dreams into tangible form. Their creations are unlike anything else in ancient China. Towering, angular masks with protruding eyes like celestial telescopes, humanoid figures draped in ornate robes of bronze so thin they seem to defy the limits of metallurgy, and trees stretching toward the heavens, their branches adorned with birds and bells. These aren't just artifacts, they're fragments of a cosmology so alien to modern eyes that their discovery in the 1980s sent shockwaves through the archaeological world. What's most baffling isn't just their artistry, it's the violence done to it. Nearly every Sanxingdui relic was deliberately smashed, burned, or buried in carefully arranged pits. Some masks were split clean down the middle, others melted beyond recognition. This wasn't the work of invaders or natural disaster. The precision of the destruction suggests ritual, an intentional dismantling of sacred objects, perhaps to release their spiritual power or mark the end of an era. One theory posits that the Sanxingdui saw their creations as vessels for deities, and breaking them was akin to setting those gods free. Another suggests a political upheaval so profound that the new order sought to erase the old gods entirely. The absence of writing deepens the enigma. While the Shang dynasty left behind oracle bones inscribed with early Chinese script, the Sanxingdui's silence is deafening. Their symbols, etched sparingly onto a handful of artifacts, resist decipherment. Were they an isolated civilization that developed independently of the Yellow River cultures, or a lost branch of the same tree? The sheer sophistication of their bronzework argues against isolation. Their alloys contained precise ratios of lead, tin, and copper, indicating advanced metallurgical knowledge, while their casting techniques using sectional molds to create hollow, intricate forms were centuries ahead of their time. Then there's the question of influence. Some scholars detect echoes of Sanxingdui iconography in later Chinese art, particularly the exaggerated eyes and serpentine motifs found in Chu culture bronzes. Yet the trail is faint, as if their legacy was absorbed, not celebrated. Their sudden disappearance around 1200 BCE coincides with seismic shifts in climate. Evidence from nearby lake sediments points to catastrophic flooding or drought. Did the rivers that fed their civilization turn against them, forcing migration or collapse? The most haunting possibility is that the Sanxingdui knew their time was ending. The careful burial of their shattered relics feels like a farewell, a conscious entrusting of their mysteries to the earth. Today, their reassembled masks stare out from museum cases, their hollow eyes seeming to ask, how much of history is built on what we've chosen to forget? In their fragments, we see not just a lost culture, but a mirror reflecting how easily the extraordinary can vanish beneath the weight of time. While most ancient civilizations left behind stone tablets or scrolls to tell their stories, the Norte Chico of coastal Peru chose a far more unusual medium, knots. Not carved in stone or pressed into clay, but meticulously tied into dangling cords of cotton and camelid wool. These were the quippers, intricate assemblies of knotted strings that may hold the keys to understanding one of the America's oldest urban civilizations. Flourishing over 5,000 years ago in the river valleys north of modern-day Lima, the Norte Chico built massive ceremonial centers like Carol Soup, complete with sunken plazas and stepped pyramids, all without the wheel, metal tools, or even pottery. Yet their most baffling achievement wasn't their architecture. It was their ability to organize such grand projects without what we'd recognize as a written language. The quipu system is deceptively simple at first glance. A main cord hangs vertically with dozens of pendant strings branching off, each tied with clusters of knots at varying heights. The position, spacing, and type of knot, whether a figure 8, overhand, or complex triple loop, likely conveyed specific information. Some scholars argue these were numerical records, with knots representing quantities in a base 10 system akin to an ancient spreadsheet. Others believe certain quipus encoded narratives, turning each twist and loop into a kind of three-dimensional language. What's astonishing is how versatile the system appears. Later Inca quipus, inspired by Norte Chico techniques, were used for everything from census data to epic poetry. Could the original quipus have been just as multifaceted? Then there's the mystery of coordination. How did a society without written contracts or blueprints mobilize labor to construct pyramids spanning the length of football fields? The answer might lie in the quipus themselves. Imagine a master builder using knotted cords to delegate tasks, each string representing a team, each knot a quota of stones to quarry or bricks to lay. Unlike cumbersome tablets, quipus were portable, durable, and easily updated, making them ideal for managing large-scale projects across vast distances. Recent studies even suggest the colors of the cords held meaning, creating a visual shorthand recognizable to all workers. But the Norte Chico's decline is as puzzling as their rise. By 1800 BCE, their bustling urban centers were abandoned, their pyramids left to the desert winds. Unlike later cultures, there's no evidence of invasion or catastrophe. Instead, climate data reveals a gradual shift, El Niño-driven floods disrupting their carefully managed irrigation systems, or droughts withering the cotton crops vital to their quipu production. Without these cords, did their organizational web unravel? The silence of the quipus taunts us. For a culture that may have encoded their entire history in knots, it's a cruel twist of fate that time has tightened those very knots into riddles we're still struggling to untie. Perhaps the most poignant lesson isn't about what the quipus contained, but what they represent. In a world obsessed with permanent records, the Norte Chico thrived using a medium as ephemeral as memory itself. Their knots whisper a radical idea: that civilization doesn't require indelible ink, only shared understanding. And in that, they were far ahead of their time, building not just pyramids, but a language woven from nothing more than string and intention. The Etruscans didn't just live in the shadow of Rome, they shaped its very foundations. Long before the Colosseum dominated the skyline, these enigmatic people were crafting gold jewelry so fine it rivaled Egyptian work, building arches centuries before the Romans claimed them as their own, and engineering drainage systems so advanced they're still studied today. Their influence seeped into every corner of early Roman culture, from the gladiatorial games to the very togas worn by senators. Yet for all their legacy, one thing remains stubbornly out of reach: their voice. The Etruscan language, preserved on thousands of inscriptions, tombs, and bronze tablets, is a linguistic puzzle that has defied full decipherment for centuries. Walk into an Etruscan tomb, and you'll find walls alive with color banquet scenes where men and women recline together as equals, a detail that shocked Greek observers who kept their women segregated. The tombs themselves are feats of engineering, some equipped with intricate channels to manage groundwater, proving the Etruscans understood hydraulics better than most Mediterranean cultures of their time. But it's the inscriptions that tantalize. The script, adapted from Greek letters, is easy enough to read phonetically. The meaning, though, that's the rub. Without a Rosetta Stone equivalent, scholars have pieced together only fragments, names of gods like Tinia, their version of Zeus, or ritual formulas about offerings. The longest surviving text, the Zagreb mummy, wraps a linen book preserved by sheer chance when it was reused as mummy binding in Egypt remains largely opaque, its funeral rites and celestial observations locked behind a linguistic barrier. What makes this silence so frustrating is how much we know the Etruscans had to say. Roman historians wrote of their elaborate religious texts, their prophecies, and their obsession with divination. The famous liver of Piacenza, a bronze model of a sheep's liver inscribed with the names of deities, hints at a complex spiritual cosmology where every crack and lobe held meaning. Their art, too, whispers of stories we can't fully grasp. Why does the statue of the Capitoline wolf, long claimed as a Roman symbol, bear Etruscan craftsmanship? What myths lie behind the haunting smile of the sarcophagus of the spouses, a masterpiece of terracotta artistry showing a couple eternally entwined? Their disappearance is no less mysterious. By the 1st century BCE, the Etruscans had been absorbed into Rome, their language fading as Latin took hold. Some suggest their elites willingly assimilated, trading cultural identity for political power. Others point to Rome's relentless expansion, erasing distinctions through conquest and colonization. But the most poignant clue might lie in their own writings. The few translated phrases often speak of endings of the sun going down or the cup being empty. Were they recording their own decline, or is that just our modern longing to hear a farewell in the fragments? The Etruscans challenge our assumptions about influence and legacy. Here was a culture that gave Rome its alphabet, its architecture, even its obsession with augury, yet left no epic poems, no chronicles of kings, no voice to shout across the ages. Their texts sit in museum cases, humming with untold stories, reminding us that history isn't just written by the victors. Sometimes it's written in languages no one remembers how to speak. High in the sandstone cliffs of the American Southwest, the Anasazi, or ancestral Pueblones, carved their homes into the very rock itself. These weren't just shelters, they were multi-story fortresses, entire villages suspended between earth and sky, their walls hugging the curves of canyon alcoves like natural extensions of the stone. At Mesa Verde in Colorado or Choco Canyon in New Mexico, you can still see the handholds they chiseled into cliff faces, the footholds worn smooth by generations of climbers hauling water, food, and children up sheer drops that would dizzy a modern hiker. But what's truly staggering isn't just where they lived, it's how abruptly they left. By the late 13th century, these cliff dwellings stood empty, their pottery still stacked in corners, their granaries half full, as if the inhabitants had stepped out for a moment and never returned. The scale of their engineering defies easy explanation. At Choco Canyon, they built a sprawling complex of great houses connected by an elaborate road network straight as arrows, stretching for miles across the desert. These weren't mere paths, some were 30 feet wide, bordered by low stone walls, and meticulously graded to maintain level surfaces. Even stranger, many roads lead nowhere, vanishing into cliffs or arroyos. Archaeologists speculate they might have been ceremonial, tracing routes tied to celestial events or sacred geography. The Pueblo Bonito Great House, with its perfectly aligned walls and circular kivas, captures the sunrise on solstices, its shadows slicing across doorways with astronomical precision. This wasn't just architecture, it was a dialogue with the cosmos. Yet for all their sophistication, the Anasazi's downfall remains a puzzle wrapped in drought and whispers of violence. Tree rings tell a story of relentless dry spells in the late 1200s, decades where rain was as scarce as a mirage. Corn, their lifeblood, would have withered in the fields, and the canyon's delicate water systems carefully channeled runoff from mesa tops might have turned to dust. But climate alone doesn't explain the defensive adaptations found in their final years. At some sites, doors and windows were deliberately narrowed, as if to fend off attackers. Others show signs of burning. Were they besieged by raiders, or did internal strife fracture their society? The answer might lie in the bones. Skeletal remains from this period reveal malnutrition and trauma, but also something darker: cannibalism. Cut marks and fractured skulls hint at desperation or ritual violence so extreme it still chills the blood. The greatest mystery isn't why they left, but where they went. Unlike vanished cultures that dissolved into history, the ancestral Pueblones likely didn't disappear, they transformed. Oral traditions of modern Pueblo tribes like the Hopi and Zuni speak of migrations, of clans scattering to new lands while carrying forward the old ways. Their descendants still honor the Kachina spirits, still grind corn on stones, still gaze at the same stars their ancestors plotted onto canyon walls. In that sense, the cliff dwellings aren't tombs of a dead culture, but waypoints in an unbroken journey. The stones may be silent, but the people remember. And perhaps that's the most profound lesson of all, that disappearance isn't always an ending. Sometimes it's just a change of address. The story of Roanoke Colony isn't just a historical footnote, it's a vanishing act so complete it's haunted historians for centuries. In 1587, over 100 English settlers, including women and children, established a foothold on the shores of what's now North Carolina. 3 years later, when a supply ship finally returned, the colony had vanished without a trace. No bodies, no battle scars, just eerie silence, and a single word carved into a wooden post: Croatoan. This wasn't random graffiti. It was a deliberate clue referencing a nearby island and the Native American tribe that lived there. But was it a message of hope or a warning? Digging deeper, the mystery only thickens. The settlers had promised to leave a Maltese cross if they were forced to flee under duress. Its absence suggests they left willingly, yet no European ever reported encountering them again. Local tribes, however, told stories of ancestors with gray eyes and a familiarity with English customs. The Lumbee people of North Carolina, in particular, have oral traditions and 18th century records that mention white Indians among their ranks, some with surnames matching the lost colonists. Could assimilation have been their salvation? Archaeological digs on Hatteras Island, once Croatoan territory, have turned up Elizabethan-era artifacts mixed with indigenous tools. A sword hilt repurposed as a scraping tool, a signet ring buried in a tribal village. These aren't just lost items, they're fragments of a cultural fusion, but not all theories point to peaceful integration. Some accounts from Jamestown settlers decades later spoke of rumors, whispers of slaughtered colonists, their remains hidden beneath the Carolina soil. A patch of land 50 miles inland, marked by pale-skinned descendants and a concentration of European-style pottery shards, has fueled speculation that the group splintered, some seeking refuge with tribes while others met violence. Even the carving itself raises questions. Why Croatoan and not a fuller message? Was it a hurried signpost or something more ominous? A name etched not as a destination but as an accusation. The true genius of the Roanoke mystery lies in its duality. It's both a historical whodunit and a mirror reflecting our own biases. For centuries, the dominant narrative assumed the settlers were victims either of indigenous aggression or their own poor planning. But what if the real story is one of resilience? If the colonists chose to abandon European rigidity for a life woven into native communities? it would rewrite not just their ending but our understanding of early cultural exchange. The silence of Roanoke isn't just an absence of answers, it's an invitation to question who gets to write history and whose voices we've overlooked. In that sense, the lost colony never truly vanished. It's been here all along, hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to read between the lines. From the Phaistos Disc to the Antikythera Mechanism, these vanished cultures didn't just leave behind artifacts, they left us riddles etched in metal, stone, and clay. Each one whispers the same unsettling truth. Our ancestors were far more inventive than we've ever given them credit for. Take the Baghdad Battery, a 2,000-year-old jar capable of generating electricity, or the Nazca Lines, massive geoglyphs so precise they could only be fully appreciated from the air, a perspective their creators supposedly never had. These aren't just curiosities, they're proof that innovation isn't a straight line. Sometimes it's a spiral, looping back on itself as knowledge is gained, lost, and rediscovered centuries later. What's haunting isn't just the sophistication of these objects, but the gaps they reveal in our historical narrative. The Antikythera Mechanism, with its gears tracking planetary movements, suggests an understanding of astronomy that rivals Renaissance Europe, yet it vanished from the record for over a millennium. How many other breakthroughs suffered the same fate? The Hittites' iron smelting, the North Chico's Quipu accounting system, the Olmecs' mastery of massive stone transport. Each was a leap forward that collapsed with the cultures that birthed them. It forces us to ask, how much of human progress is built on rediscovery rather than steady advancement? Yet these mysteries aren't just about the past, they're mirrors. The Khmer Empire's hydraulic cities fell to climate shifts, the Rapa Nui's Moai toppled alongside their ecosystem, and the ancestral Puebloans abandoned their cliff dwellings as droughts tightened their grip. Their stories echo our own challenges, reminding us that no civilization, no matter how ingenious, is immune to the forces of nature or the weight of its own ambitions. So what's next? Every year, LiDAR scans peel back jungle canopies to reveal lost cities, while advances in materials science help us decode artifacts once deemed indecipherable. The Tartessians' submerged capital, the Etruscans' untranslated texts, the Sanxingdui's shattered bronzes, each is a puzzle waiting for its key, and who knows? The next great discovery might be hiding in plain sight, tucked away in a museum basement or buried beneath someone's backyard. History isn't a closed book. It's a palimpsest with layers of meaning still waiting to be uncovered. These 20 cultures didn't just vanish, they left behind breadcrumbs not to taunt us but to invite us to look deeper. After all, the greatest lesson they offer might be humility. If our ancestors could achieve so much with so little, imagine what fragments of our own world will baffle future archaeologists. The past isn't primitive, it's pregnant with possibilities we're only beginning to grasp. Now it's your turn. Which of these lost technologies fascinates you most? Drop your thoughts below and let's keep the conversation going. And if you're hungry for more deep dives into history's hidden corners, hit that subscribe button. The next mystery is just a click away.